political clientelism, it's not like this, but it is by dispersion of the population. So there are different small concentrations of people, of communities. So some of them are small communities, and they need to have a school in there, yeah, because it is the other school or the other community is too far away. So when I was in the school myself, I had to walk almost 2 hours to get the school. Yeah, a school with it was a pluridocente. It had 5 professors at that time in the parroquia, the small town. So, but the government has the plan to reduce the number of the schools to 5,600 well-equipped schools, which is nice. So the intention is very nice, but there are communities which are still isolated communities. So they can't go to the schools of the Millennium or the bigger schools where they can found a very nice school, well-equipped, etc. So it's very far away. So this reality did not disappear. And then with Millennium schools, which will not be a solution, for this thing. And then it's good intentions, but understandings of the complexity behind of this kind of schools. And these schools, of course, are Quechua peasants or Quechua or Shuar schools. Most of them are indigenous, are attending to serving to indigenous children in the country. So the schools of the Millennium and then the other schools, the government provide uniformes gratis, so that's uniforms, so free, so free clothes for children, and it's for urban and rural schools. Yeah, sometimes in the rural schools they offer some standardized indigenous clothes. So it is the truly interculturality. Yeah, this kind of stylized clothes for indigenous. Yeah, and then the curriculum is unique, as it's standardized. One curriculum for the total of schools in the country, and then no room for indigenous language. So knowledge, as I show you, that the bilingualism is not part of the official concerns, and the emphasis is on interculturality. So that's the official discourse. So interculturality, but without language. So it is prohibited to speak about the languages, but it is nice to talk about interculturality. So we have to relate each other. The languages are just dividing us. So it is the Simononic construction of nation. So some conclusions. So the bilingual education in Ecuador has been a grassroots movement, a project, yeah, a project from below, even though there was some interest from above, but with different conceptions and perception of the indigenous cultures and languages. So currently there is a fundamental contradiction between official discourses about bilingual education and the real practices in the schools. Yeah, the great investments in education are focused on infrastructure and equipment, but not in teacher training, neither relevant curriculum according to cultural and linguistic characteristics of the society, and as it is established in the constitutional and legal frame. So the government has dismantling the Institutos Normales Bilingües. So all of the institutos, the institutes I talked to you, were just closed or changed their status. Yeah, they became institutos tecnológicos, but which is not concerned about education, but about any other careers or possibly relevant to the region, but not teacher educations. Yeah, so the discourse of interculturality is being used to cover the real linguistic policies of indigenous language shift throughout the country. So the institutos, so some numbers, right? So the school teachers educated in the institutos normales were in the last 5 years were very interesting. Yeah, so you can see the numbers in there, and then the total. And even though we have the bilingual institutes, there were a very chronic deficit of bilingual teachers in the country. Yeah, but now all of these institutos bilingües have been closed. Yeah, there is not any system of education, of teacher education in the country, and the universities are not offering any program for teacher education and bilingual education, etc. Yeah, okay, so there's some information about the bilingualism of students and the institutes, and okay. So there is this is about the perception of the language. So sorry, it's in Spanish. So it's about the future expectations about the language. Yeah, asked to the students of the institutos pedagógicos bilingües. So I made research in the institutos, and they believe this about the future of the language. So it is very, very interesting because it is the highest appreciation is the Spanish as well as the Quechua or Shuar language are very important in the future, right? So it's a great importance. Yeah, 42% and 47%. So the Quechua language. So this is what the students and the youth students believe about the language. So it is interesting because there is a nice scenario to teach the language. So the language shift and indigenous knowledge weakening. So in this moment, so there are some elements as to think about and to be worried about the language, indigenous language. So the first thing I was able to see is the dynamic relations between cities and rural communities. So before there were far away located communities, and the comuneros, people from communities, have to use Spanish only when they go to the cities, and then they return to the communities, and Quechua or any other language were used every day in the social interactions. But now it is not happening anymore. Yeah? And then there is an expansion of state services, especially the electricity, and with electricity goes the TV. So you can find a TV, in every house in the countryside. And what it means, it is Spanish presence in the community, at home. Yeah. So children spend a lot of time watching TV in Spanish, and then little by little, the children and parents use more Spanish in the early communication. So there is nothing in Quechua and TV programs, nothing, absolutely. So the state discourses impact on community way of life. So there are many services, many state officials going to the communities to talk about the children's rights, youth rights, etc. And they are doing all of this in Spanish. Mass media and monolingualism. So I already said that the TV and the other mass media in general, they are monolingual. So this model frame the uses of language and the symbolic meaning of the language. So the children do not speak indigenous language anymore. So I saw myself 2 years ago when I was in the community. So in every house, the children are speaking just in Spanish, and they don't understand Quechua. No, they don't understand Quechua. So, in this context, the bilingual schools are not factors or elements to maintain the language as it was before, or 20 years or more before. Yeah, the bilingual schools are factors for revitalization of indigenous languages. It is an imperative. We need this in this moment, but under this government we have nothing, absolutely. So it is, there are very huge challenges for indigenous communities in order to reinvent the discourse about bilingual education and imagine any initiatives to supporting the language in the communities, in the houses, and by using it in the everyday communication in the community, because in the schools we can't expect anything while Korea are in the power. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much, Sam. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for a very interesting presentation. Unfortunately,
oh yeah, sorry about that.
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
The future of bilingualism. Why don't, since you're a specialist in bilingual education, it would be interesting to form a sort of like an association, like for instance, what Jewish children do in the United States. They had Hebrew school. It's called Hebrew Free School. And they teach the language, but they take it out of their pockets, and the children help support the teachers. And then my other comment was, you know, the thing of not using that book anymore, throwing that book away. The same thing happened in Arizona. They had an ethnic studies program. They developed fantastic readers for the children that were able to motivate them to study, and they actually scored higher grades than in other schools, in the regular state examinations, etc. But they said they were politicizing the children, as if teaching in English isn't politicizing them. Right? It's the same. It's actually the same thing. So, as a bilingual educator, what do you think your future is in Ecuador? What do you plan to do when you go back?
I was trying to work with. So there is this moment there is a crisis within the indigenous organizations. So I think there is a crisis of collective identity. So there is not a belonging, very strong belonging sense. So the indigenous youth has access to higher education, or in general to the education, but as the indigenous organizations are very weak, disarticulated in this last year, so the youth has not any sense as to keep thinking themselves as indigenous. Yeah? And it is one of problematic things. So I was trying to work with young people, as to reflect about our history, our culture, our language, and to use it, yeah? And how to use the language. So the other thing is to work with professors. Yeah, it will be fine, but you can't do anything from outside, because everything is controlled by the government. So you can't use any other resources than those provided by the government. So if you organize a foundation or an institution as to support the bilingual education, the government do not permit to talk to the professor. So you have to ask permission, but he doesn't permit you. So even to the parents can't decide about their children. So there was a case in Otavalo. So there was there is a circuit very close to Otavalo. You know this. The matrix school was located in San Pablo. Yeah, and then children from Peguche has to children have to come to the San Pablo schools. But it's difficult. So there is not bus, there is not any services as to move the students from Pejuche to San Pablo. So the parents wanted to take their children and put in another school in Otavalo, which is closer. But the government did not permit to take children, even to their parents. So it is difficult in this moment to think something. So I was trying to influence in the government, so by preparing some proposals, but nobody are interested in bilingual education. So I think there is a hidden agenda or hidden goals as to erase the indigenous language from the country. Yeah, so it is terrible. It is terrible. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Later.
Okay.
I'll go to your office.
Okay. Okay.
If you need to get a drink of water, go to the restroom. It's not on. It's okay. It's okay. I'll turn it on. It's okay. Yeah, I will.
Push the mute.
Okay.
Okay.
We're going to, hello? Yeah. We're going to start in about 5 minutes. So this is the 5. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Good evening. I'm Barbara Nichols, and I'm the president of the UNA USA Dane County chapter, and proud to bring to your attention that the Dane County UNA USA chapter has been a continuous member of the United Nations since 1945 when it was founded. So we're one of the oldest continuous chapters. Yes, good for us. Just a brief comment about the UN. The United Nations is an international organization which was founded in 1945 after the Second World War, and it's committed to maintaining international peace and security. The work of the United Nations reaches the globe, and although it's best known for peacekeeping and peace building and conflict prevention, the UN has 4 main purposes: to keep peace throughout the world, to develop friendly relations among nations, to help nations work together to improve the lives of poor people, to conquer hunger, to conquer disease, to conquer illiteracy, and to encourage respect and dignity for each other's rights and freedoms, and to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations to achieve these goals. Our local chapter advocates for these principles of the UN, and we do that in 3 ways. We have an ongoing lecture series that runs from September through June, in which we pick a topic that is relevant to issues that the UN is dealing with. We partner with other groups in Madison dealing with these 4 main purposes of the UN: peacekeeping and dealing with other areas. Our theme this year, and our final program, is we celebrate annually United Nations Day, which is the 24th of October. And that's what we advocate for. It's a way to bring public attention to the ongoing work of the United Nations. Our program themes this year have been on water safety. That's what's left of my New England accent, water. If you don't know what I'm saying, W-A-T-E-R, water safety and sustainable food and environments. Also, we have been concerned with refugees. So before I introduce the context for which our speaker will be speaking, since today is November 11th, Armistice Day, which commemorates the end of World War I, before I was born. I know I'm as old as dirt, but not as old as World War I, 1918, I believe it ended. Let's take a moment of silence for all the veterans who have served in wars. This evening, in acknowledging 2014 International Year of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, has been one of the international years that the United Nations has created. The United Nations every week has a year celebration of some event. And in 2014, we are also then celebrating the International Year of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. Just a brief historical context. When the United Nations was founded in 1945, the territory of Palestine was still administered by the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland. And the seminal issue of debate, which began in 1945 and is still ongoing, was how to create an Arab state and a Jewish state, which would involve Jews in Palestine and Arabs in Israel. As you know, since that time, there have been wars, dispute, and struggles, and many, many, many refugees. And so here to share with us tonight on-the-ground experience of what is happening in Palestine is our speaker. He will be introduced by Joan Deming. You can, yes.
Tomorrow night, or rather Thursday night, is a program many of you I think may be interested in. There's a series called Community Cinema. It's a collaboration between the library and public broadcasting. The film is called Evolution of a Criminal. It's a story of restorative justice. And we'll have a local panel, including Jerome Dillard and several other folks from church communities. So the film starts at 6:30 and a discussion at 8. So it's a good program. Just want to also just mention in December, this program, December 9th, Chris Watley, who's the Executive Director of the United Nations Association, is speaking here on a human rights theme, and that's very exciting for the group.
Right, since December 17th is International Human Rights Day. Joe.
So we'll start tonight on human rights in Palestine and then broaden it to human rights in general next month. I'm Joan Deming. I am really pleased to be here with you and have been an on again, off again, not very present, but definitely thinking along the lines of UN support for many years. And I come from parents who were lifelong UNA members, so it's very good to be with you this evening. I am a United Methodist ordained pastor, but I've been working for the last 7 years as the executive director of an organization called Pilgrims of Ibilin. Ibilin is a village in the northern part of the present-day state of Israel, but historic Palestine. Ibilin is a Palestinian village where a Palestinian priest, Father Elias Shakur, started schools for Palestinian, Muslim and Christian and Druze students, and the faculty has always also included Jewish teachers in addition to the the Christian, Muslim, and Druze teachers. For a while in their history, they even had some Jewish students, but no longer. Our partnership expanded a few years ago beyond the schools in Ibilin to several other peacemaking organizations in the West Bank and in Israel. And one of those wonderful organizations is represented tonight by the director and founder of the organization. The organization is We Am, and our guest speaker tonight is Zubi Zubi from Bethlehem. We Am is a Palestinian conflict resolution center. They practice a Palestinian version of mediation and teach peer mediation to students and to women and members of the community, but also Zubi and some of his colleagues are actively involved in mediating disputes, and some of the many difficulties and conflicts that arise when people live in a pressure cooker of a situation where every day just the challenges of getting up and going through the day include humiliations and being sidetracked and having roadblocks literally and figuratively put in front of you. And living with that causes physical problems, but also emotional and spiritual problems. And so all of those are dealt with by the leaders and mediators of WIAM, the Conflict Resolution Center. WIAM is an Arabic word that means cordial relationships or cordial relations between people. And in addition to doing the mediating, WIAM also offers training for children, youth, women, men, groups, individuals, in order to help them know their full rights as human beings and especially their rights in a complicated legal situation where many rights have been taken away, but some still exist, and teaching nonviolent methods of resistance and of maintaining a hold on one's humanity and the grace of living together, a belief that there can be a beautiful life together that even expands beyond what people experience.
So the schools of the Millennium and then the other schools, the government provide uniformes gratis, so that's uniform, so free, so free clothes for children, and it's for urban and rural schools. Yeah, sometimes in the rural schools they offer some stylized, standardized indigenous clothes. So it is the truly interculturality, this kind of stylized clothes for indigenous. Yeah? And then the curriculum is unique, as it's standardized. One curriculum for the total of schools in the country. And then no room for indigenous language, so knowledge, as I show you, that the bilingualism is not part of the official concerns. And the emphasis, so the intention is very nice. But there are communities which are still isolated communities. So they can't go to the schools of the Millennium or the bigger schools where they can found a very nice school, well equipped, etc. So it's very far away. So this reality did not disappear. And then with Millennium schools, which will not be a solution, for this thing. And then it's good intentions, but understandings of the complexity behind of this kind of schools. And these schools, of course, are Quechua peasants or Quechua or Shuar schools. Most of them are indigenous, are attending to or serving to indigenous children in the country. Political clientelism, it's not like this, but it is by dispersion of the population. So there are different small concentrations of people, of communities. So some of them are small communities, and they need to have a school in there, yeah, because it is the other school or the other community is too far away. So when I was in the school myself, I had to walk almost 2 hours to get the school, yeah, a school with it was a pluridocente. It had 5 professors at that time in the parroquia, the small town. So. But the government has the plan to reduce the number of the schools to 5,600 well-equipped schools, which is nice. Is on interculturality, so that's the official discourse. Interculturality, but without language. So it is prohibited to speak about the language, but it is nice to talk about interculturality. So we have to relate each other. The languages are just dividing us. So it is the Simononic construction of nation. So, so some conclusions. So the bilingual education in Ecuador has been a grassroots movement project, a project from below, even though there was some interest from above, but with different conceptions and perception of the indigenous cultures and language. So currently there is a fundamental contradiction between official discourses about bilingual education and the real practices in the schools. Yeah, the great investments in education are focused on infrastructure and equipment, but not in teacher training, neither relevant curriculum according to cultural and linguistic characteristics of the society, and as it is established in the constitutional and legal frame. So the government has dismantling the Institutos Normales Bilingües. So all of the institutos, the institutes I talked to you, were just closed or changed their status. Yeah, they became institutos tecnológicos, but which is not concerned about education, but about any other careers or possibly relevant to the region, but not teacher educations. Yeah, so the discourse of interculturality is being used to call